Okay, let me just start this off by saying that, in my opinion, She-Hulk is not as bad as some people will try and make you believe. However, it is unequivocally very bad. Very not good. How do I describe this? She-Hulk is like waking up on Christmas morning and getting Mega Bloks instead of Lego for Christmas. I mean, it's still present, but like, come on, it's Mega Bloks. YouTube knows the kind of videos I like, so when She-Hulk came out, I was recommended so many of these videos, just complaining about how bad it was. I decided to hold off on watching it, mostly because I didn't want to, but also because I wanted to watch it all the way through to do a video on it. So when I finally did sit down to watch it, I tried my best to come at it from a neutral stance without any presuppositions formed by the videos I'd watched. I was Switzerland, okay? I think I was able to do that pretty well, and really, after watching it all the way through with my undivided attention, this was my impression. This represents all of my emotion toward the show as a whole. For me, it's really just boring. I wasn't super offended by it like some people were, and I certainly wasn't laughing at it, even though it's meant to be a comedy. It wasn't unwatchable, just Mega Bloks, you know? Kinda crappy, wouldn't watch again. Now, my goal in watching the show was to really discover, why do people dislike She-Hulk so much? What makes this show so incredibly controversial? I've heard people complain about so many different things of the show itself, but I wanted to see if I could find the root of why people have chosen to dunk on this show so incredibly hard. And finally, after watching it, I've decided that it really comes down to 3 reasons I'm going to explain in this video. So come along with me as we dive into this abomination.
Because I do it infinitely more than you.
It's no secret that this show is full of cameos and throwbacks to other Marvel movies and characters. We even get to see our first crime-fighting action from Daredevil in the MCU. Literally, in one episode, Jen tells the audience directly that this, quote-unquote, isn't one of those shows that has a weekly cameo, even though it pretty much is. But that isn't even my problem with it. The problem is that the heroes and characters they choose to include just seem like absolute nitwits compared to Jennifer. I think it's a similar problem to one of the issues people had with Thor: Love and Thunder, another large-budget Marvel production. As soon as Jane Foster picks up Mjolnir, she's instantly a superhero. There's no training required, she doesn't go through any kind of hero's arc, and in fact, she's almost just thrown into the position where there's very little to no explanation on her personal development as a character. This kind of instant gratification and glorification of a hero just isn't relatable to the audience. It isn't capturing to watch, and it's just overall poor writing. Additionally, it makes Thor look completely incompetent in most situations. Why does he have to be all goofy and screw things up like a normal person? Why can't he be a perfect, infallible Lady Thor? It just cheapens his character to the audience. I think the same thing is happening here in She-Hulk. Bruce Banner, like Thor, is a character that's gone through so much and has brought the audience and fans along through like 6 movies of character development and empathy. To put it short, I mean, the audience just loves Hulk. They want to see him succeed, to overcome his obstacles, and to finally be at peace with the inner turmoil of his Banner/Hulk issues. As a side note, I think that's part of the reason it seems so stupid when he just shows up as Smart Hulk in Endgame. Like, it doesn't show us any of that development. Anyway, my point is, when we get to this rando who nobody's ever seen before, she's brand new on screen, everything she does is almost perfect. None of the issues that Bruce spent like a decade resolving are anything to her. She doesn't even have to balance with the Hulk side of herself, she's just totally conscious and in control of her new body. Now, I won't say that's necessarily a wrong choice by the writers. In fact, I think it lines up pretty well with the comics from what I understand. If it had been written in a different way, by all means, she could have had her own issues and problems that she wrestles with as part of her character development. Even the balance of power between a jealous Bruce Banner and a cocky Jennifer Walters could have been an interesting angle to lean into. However, she just doesn't seem to have any major flaws. All of her so-called problems are so superficial and unrealistic that it doesn't elicit any sympathy from me, and apparently a lot of her audience. And the fact that she clowns on Hulk so dang hard during this first episode just makes me, and apparently a lot of the audience, really angry. Not only is she good at everything already, but she's also cocky about it, and she totally downplays Bruce's struggle. Like this scene where they're doing yoga and she tells Bruce that she deals with her anger infinitely more than him. This guy was literally hunted by the government for like 5 years. I'm not saying that gives people a pass to be rude or like guys to catcall her on the street or anything, nothing like that, but her complaining about such a comparatively little thing just seems so disrespectful. Also, I should add that I literally wore this exact Led Zeppelin shirt for not 1, but 2 of my high school theater productions, so I approve of the costume design. Now, I know somebody in the comments is gonna say, "It's because she's a woman, you sexist pig." Well, no. That's not why, and frankly, that's a very poor argument even if it was. Believe it or not, I don't care if your protagonist is a woman. I know, super big brain stuff here. There are so many good female protagonists. Look at Sarah Connor in Terminator, Trinity in The Matrix, and yes, even Black Widow in the MCU, and these are just the ones in this kind of genre. Even though I have problems with all those movies on their own, none none of that is because they're women. That's stupid. The fact remains that if a studio decides to take a character that millions of people love and relate to and completely emasculate it, it doesn't matter the gender, the audience is likely going to harbor some resentment to the newcomer, even if they haven't acted pridefully, but I would argue that Jennifer does, making it even worse. If all along Hulk had been a female character that we adored and some guy gets his own show as He-Hulk acting the same way, we would rightfully hate him. Also, can I just say, Hulk talks a big talk about being in control of himself and tries to teach Jen the same, but he literally goes and beats up his cousin. And he doesn't even do it well. He's been in the superhero business for what, like a decade? And he can't even beat up his cousin? Or at least defend himself instead of all out fighting her? The writers did my man Hulk dirty. I think Hulk is the most glaring example of this problem, but some of the other characters run into issues as well. For example, Wong is just used as a comedic relief that needs Jennifer's help to take care of some bats for some reason. Like, this guy is Sorcerer Supreme and he can't figure out how to close one of their own magic portals, really? Daredevil, I think, was handled pretty well. Of course, Charlie Cox is always going to be great, but he also got clowned pretty hard by Jennifer in this parking lot scene. Man, she's just good at everything, isn't she? The only throwback character that I was actually okay with the change in was Abomination. Here's the thing, it's been almost a decade and a half since we've seen Emil Blonsky or the Abomination on screen. Therefore, his vast character change is warranted, even expected after all this time. Additionally, he's a character that has nothing to prove. He doesn't compete with the protagonist at all, and he doesn't need her help in the superhero department. He does get her help legally, because after all, she is a lawyer. That's something she worked hard on, presumably. It makes sense that she can do semi-decent work as a criminal lawyer, but it doesn't make sense that she can take out Daredevil just by putting on some spandex.
Spandex is your best friend.
Honestly, Abomination's character is my favorite part of the show. He's one of the only redeeming factors because he's actually somewhat funny. I will say though that episode 7 is the best episode in the show, hands down. This meeting where all of them get together and talk about their problems with Blonsky supervising is actually really funny. Like, I was laughing out loud, which I did not expect to do after 6 episodes of this. Seriously, they should have leaned way more into the goofy superheroes. That was the funniest part of the show. With Man-Bull, Swashbuckler, Porcupine, even this Mr. Immortal guy. Let me put it this way. I would not waste my time and watch this whole show again, but I would 100% just go back and watch episode 7 for more stuff like this.
Seriously, how did you get these powers?
I really don't feel like talking about it.
Nepotism. I knew it.
Oh, take a lap, Dennis.
There's a hot chick over there. I'm gonna go talk to it.
Bruh.
Like I said at the beginning of this video, I wasn't personally offended by the way that men are portrayed in the show. I do, however, see why a large subgroup of the audience disliked it. And I am almost offended at how poor the scriptwriting is, but we'll talk more about that later. I can genuinely say that I don't think there were any likable male characters in the whole show, besides maybe Bruce, Daredevil, and maybe this guy, who I don't even remember his name and I can't be bothered to look it up. You could also make the argument that Abomination is pretty likable. Like I said, he's my favorite character. But like, even Wong comes off a little weird and unlikable at some parts. What's with his weird relationship with this Madison girl? It just seems so unnecessary. This guy sucks. That guy sucks. These guys really suck. That guy's just kind of creepy. This guy sucks. And this guy. Here's my issue with this guy. Spoiler alert, he's a twist villain. Oh, I know, big surprise. But it really wasn't, since every single male character in the show is just an absolute buffoon or a pervert. By the time we are introduced to the first somewhat decent guy, Josh, it's obvious that he's actually evil. Also, after it's revealed that Josh was secretly trying to steal her blood or whatever, something stupid like that, there's never any confrontation. It just disappears. It's bad writing. There's also this guy who goes out on a date with She-Hulk and immediately when he sees her as Jen, just gets the heck out of there? Come on, you're telling me that this dude is just gonna dip after like 15 seconds because she's not a huge green lady anymore? That's so garbage. She's a pretty lady, but I guess men bad? But you wanna know what confused me most about the show? If indeed what people say is true, that they wanted to portray a strong female protagonist, I'm all for that. But why would they make literally every female in the show a cheap caricature of a woman? Jen is the only person who has any real depth, and frankly, she's just kind of boring. It's not even that the actress Tatiana Maslany is a bad actress. I actually really like her, and I think she could do a great job with the character if given the right script. But the writing just makes her character seem cheap and shallow to try and be funny. You see the same with her paralegal, yet another character I cannot remember the name of. She isn't very funny and just comes across as someone who's desperate for attention and uninteresting. She also gives terrible advice to the protagonist and just seems kind of dumb. Also, for someone who's meant to be a strong independent lead, Jennifer spends so much of the show looking for other people's attention, and even specifically men's romantic approval. Even Jen's parents are trying to set her up with random guys, and she gets hit on all the time. Honestly, I'm not personally offended by the portrayal of men, I'm just more insulted that they think this is good comedy. It's just not. I know comedy is subjective, but y'all, this ain't it. It's almost like the people making the show knew that it wasn't funny or interesting when they were making it. Look at the montage here of all the bad things people say about her online. It's like whoever was making this show realized that the comedy wasn't great or not the actual point of the show, and so by including something in this show like this, they can just claim that everybody knew this would happen. Because of course, for some ambiguous reason, people hate strong women or something like that. But to be fair, they don't just portray men as bad. Again, it's everyone. Everyone kind of sucks. Nobody is likable. Nobody has much depth. The greatest comedies still have subtleties that draw you in. This is just bland. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this show is just mega blocks.
Okay, now get back to the show. See you on the big screen.
Visually, most of the show actually looks pretty good. I mean, for a multi-billion-dollar film corporation, I certainly hope that they could put out a couple mil for some cinematic shots. When the trailer first came out, the CGI did look very weird, and I hate to break it to you, Disney, but it still looks pretty goofy. In terms of framing, color grading sets, all the technical aspects, minus the CGI, it's pretty good. But in terms of the writing, it's just... yeah. It's bland, unoriginal, and tries to be all meta and wacky when it's really just unfunny. Also, in hindsight, there are just so many scenes that seem unnecessary. Like this scene where they go confront Titania at the show, or like half the scenes at the law firm. I can't tell if they left them in because they felt like they were genuinely funny, or it helped develop the plot somehow, or perhaps they just needed to reach a time quota. Honestly, most of the snort-worthy moments in this show aren't even done by the dialogue. A lot of them are visual gags, like Jen carrying this super buff dude, or us catching a glimpse of Wong's LinkedIn profile. Again, I get that this is supposed to be a different kind of show. It's not meant to be like other MCU shows, like Loki or Hawkeye, where they have an overarching plot that's driven forward in each episode. She-Hulk has shorter episodes, less tension, and it's more relaxed. The issue is that it still needs to be filled with something enjoyable, or your audience isn't going to want to watch it. She-Hulk episodes are closer to 30 or 40 minutes, where other MCU shows are like an hour. And that makes sense because it's a comedic show, and that way you don't have to drive the plot as much with drama and twists. All that sort of, good storytelling. However, it's written in such a way that they just want you to think it's a show with an overarching story, but by the time you get to the last episode, it's all too scattered to be tied together in any reasonable way. And the way they do solve this is by having Jennifer literally break out and jump into another Disney Plus Marvel show, go behind the scenes to change a bunch of key plot points. But it's just not funny. It doesn't really add anything to the show, and for something that's supposed to be satirical, it takes itself strangely seriously. The result is that none of the plot lines line up, and the entirety of the overarching plot is completely destroyed. Maybe some people like that. It's certainly a bit out of the box, but quite honestly, it didn't do it for me. It was just cringy and bad. It's almost like they were just trying to create a PG-13 version of Deadpool without all the charisma of Ryan Reynolds. You get what I'm saying? Listen, I don't want to be one of those guys who just complain and don't offer any solutions. So it begs the question, how would I have restructured the show? Well, first of all, get rid of all the crap about all these guys. Women don't need relationships and guy problems to be an interesting protagonist. And if you think they do, that's probably sexist. So I would still have Jen head up the superhuman law division, but mostly focus on the funny and quirky characters that come into her practice and all the strange superhero problems they have. You can even have her still break the fourth wall, but just write it so she's a little less pretentious, please. If it's meant to be a comedic show, scrap the whole idea that there's an overarching plot through the season and just focus on the comedy. I think it would have been infinitely improved if each episode was closer to an hour long and each one focused on a superhuman case that she took in the law firm. That way she can start to figure out how to be a lawyer/superhero, as well as take advice from Daredevil earlier in the season and start helping people out when the law fails them. Have her help people by gathering evidence and working on becoming more effective at using her Hulk body for good, and kick some butt along the way. She could even get into her own legal issues by overstepping her bounds and cause some tension, while never too serious. Honestly, I like the idea of a Hulk lawyer who can be a little cocky at times. It's a good premise for a comedy show, but this just isn't the way to do it.
Nope.
If you can think of any other reasons that people dislike this show, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys have to say, just to make sure to keep it respectful. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe so I can tell you guys enjoy the content. This will probably be my last video until after Christmas, so my one word of advice for anyone looking for a Christmas present this year: forget the Mega Blocks. Buy that loved one some Lego. Also, Lego, I absolutely love you. If you want to sponsor me, you know where to find me. See ya, Merry Christmas!